In today's video, we reveal a chilling story of trust turned to terror. A family friend, someone they had welcomed and believed in, was secretly hiding a nightmare too horrifying to imagine. On the evening of March of White 8, 2020, Gabrielle Liniuaki, a high school girl from a small town in rural Nevada who was 16 years old, just disappeared. After band practice, she left the youth center and was never seen again. In just a few hours, calls started. Fear set in. The first searches began. But something darker was going on behind the scenes of a normal Sunday. Soon, Gabrielle's every move on SnapMap, every message she sent, and every step she took were being watched too closely to ignore. A strange absence quickly turned into one of the most shocking crimes in Elko County history. It wasn't just that it took place in the desert where no one could see it. What really scared me was who she was with and what they did to her in those last minutes. Gabrielle was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado on June 4, 2003. She was born Gabrielle Lynn, but from a very young age she liked being called Brittany. Her family said this was her choice because she wanted to control what people called her. The family moved to Nevada's Spring Creek in 2010 in Elko County. It was for work. Her dad, James Aliaki, got a job with a company that digs for gold. Her mother, Alicia Ujliai, took care of the kids and kept the house in order. Even after they got separated, Brittany's parents stayed together for her and her younger brother James Jr. Aliai as much as you can. Both stayed active in Gabrielle's life, keeping their relationship neutral and avoiding arguments. She has always loved being outside. She lived her life taking care of horses and other animals. She was riding her horse through herds by the time she was 9 years old, which was normal for her age in that area, but amazing for her. Trainers and neighbors said she was sure of herself in the saddle and able to do things on her own. Gabrielle rode in youth rodeos and even won the title of Rodeo Queen, which was a big deal in her town because it meant a bright future for her. She was interested in more than just country life, though. Brittany talked about her plans for the future with her friends. She was thinking about going in two very different directions. She could join the Navy and work in mental health, or she could become a special effects makeup artist. This wide range of goals showed that she was willing to try new things. But at the same time, being a teenager was hard. Some of Gabrielle's classmates were mean to her at school. Beginning at age 14, there were times when pressure built up over time. Brittany's mother says that she often came home from school feeling sad, stopped hanging out with friends, and eventually lost the desire to go to class. The family chose not to send their kids to traditional school and instead set up homeschooling, which was officially approved by the school system. Gabrielle got a job at a nearby ranch while she was homeschooling. She was told to take care of the animals, clean up the pastures, and do some simple maintenance work. Her boss often talked about how reliable and responsible she was. She didn't need to be told or watched over. Along with her work in agriculture, she did jobs around the house and did things with her dad. James was her best friend. They worked on songs together and talked about their future plans. On the day Brittany disappeared, he was the first person to notice that something wasn't right. This picture showed a young woman who was strong-willed, independent, and rooted in her small town's customs while also looking far beyond it. Brittany's life looked like that of a teenager until the spring of 2020. She had a lot of big choices to make. The small town of Spring Creek is in the northeastern part of Nevada and is in Elko County. Back in the 1970s, the town was built as a place for gold mine workers to live. That base of the economy hasn't changed much. A lot of people in the area still depend on jobs in nearby mines. The place has a mix of city and country life. Open fields and private farms are right next to paved streets, petrol stations, and grocery stores. There are just over 20,000 people living here and most of them know each other by name. The way of life in the American West is deeply rooted in the culture of the area. It's not just for fun to wear cowboy hats and work with animals at the rodeo. These things are important parts of everyday life. In high school, horseback riding and rodeo events are often ways for teens to show off their social status. Briuj Leakey and Bryce Edward Dickey were both born and raised in the same town in Spring Creek. He was a part of the youth scene, did rodeo, and often went to school events. He knew the Ulaki family from when he was a teenager. People in the area thought of him as one of them, and Brittany's parents thought they could trust him. For years, Bryce and Gabrielle had been getting closer. They became friends when they were kids and have kept in touch ever since. His age made people see him as a guardian, especially in the rodeo world where kids often spent long hours together. Gabrielle's folks not only agreed with the friendship, they pushed it. They thought Bryce was responsible and grown up. He would often visit, eat meals with them, help them with work, and was one of the few people they could trust to watch their daughter. It was known among kids that Bryce was cool. He was sure of himself, good with horses, and knew how to act in public. People in the rural West liked the way he looked and how he made them feel. He was liked by many. But as he got older, trends in the way he behaved began to show up. These patterns had been there for too long without being noticed. His relationships with other women were one of the first red flags. A past girlfriend of Bryce's said in court that he had crossed some very important lines. She said that he choked her without her permission during private meetings. She begged him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. This happened at least 4 times. A candlelight vigil was held in Gabrielle's honor on the same day as one of those events, which added a deeply disturbing layer to the case. Even though he knew what was going on, Bryce was very noticeable in the days after Gabrielle went missing. He helped with public searches, shared missing person alerts, and showed concern online, making it look like he was a friend who had lost someone. As the truth came out, it was a big blow to a lot of people. Gabrielle and Bryce were related, but Bryce also had something to do with her fate. During the probe, he kept up a confident front. He made up a story about what happened and stuck to it with all his might. But cracks were seen by police right away. The way he felt didn't match how serious the issue was. Even though proof started to point out holes in his story, he didn't seem scared or sorry. At Bryce's trial, the defense tried to show him as a young man who was caught up in a tragedy that he couldn't change. That story quickly fell apart, though, thanks to digital footprints and other proof. It looked like any other Sunday afternoon, March 8, 2020. Gabrielle went to the Spring Creek Community Center with her dad, James, to watch him practice music. They both liked doing the same thing every day. He played and she backed him up. Gabrielle sat in the hall and looked through her phone while James worked on sound equipment. She also talked on Snapchat. And at 3:30 p.m., she told her dad, "Bryce is coming to pick me up. That was it. I'll be back soon. There's no other reason." James says she was in a good mood when she left. A blue pickup truck that looked familiar was waiting outside. The driver was Bryce Dickey. Gabrielle said goodbye with a wave, got in, and the truck drove off. It was the last time her family saw her. Bryce later said they didn't stay together for long. He told her he would pick her up near the school parking lot where she was meeting someone else. When asked for more information, he told a less clear story. He talked about a stranger in a cowboy hat who was driving a green car with stickers on it. He didn't name or describe the person further, but detectives didn't believe it at first. It was a Sunday, so there was no school or action on campus. The area was empty, even though there were no cameras or security guards. He said he had left a longtime friend there by herself with a guy he couldn't identify. It didn't make sense. By evening, Gabrielle's family was getting worried. She still hadn't gone back home. It used to be that her phone was always on and available, but now it went straight to voicemail. She wouldn't do that. People knew Gabrielle would stay in touch and always answer quickly. The family first tried to get in touch with Bryce. He told them that Gabrielle had told him she was meeting a new friend near a school parking lot. Bryce says she walked towards another car that had stickers on it. He didn't wait for her to get in though, not talk to the car. Not even sure who they were, he left right away. That answer brought up more questions than it answered. A car with those stickers would have stood out in Spring Creek, which is a small, close-knit town. Still, no one else had seen it. Just Bryce. Investigators used Bryce's story as a working timeline for the first 24 hours. He was, after all, the last person who was sure to have seen Gabrielle. Still, something didn't feel right. Bryce's story seemed more like a filler than the truth, because it mentioned a mysterious third person who didn't have a name or physical description. Between when Gabrielle got into Bryce's truck and when her first call failed, there was about 2 hours of time. Around 5:30 p.m., either her cell phone died or was turned off by hand. There had been no signs of trouble up until that point. On March 8, 2020, that evening, Gabrielle's family did something about it. They called friends and double-checked texts to try to figure out where she might have gone. It didn't make sense. Close family friends started sharing her picture on Facebook and Snapchat later that night, asking anyone who had seen her after 3:30 p.m. to please help them find her, to step forward. A report of a missing person was made to the Elko County Sheriff's Office the next morning, March 9th. The local government acted quickly. Several search teams were put together. Volunteers, rodeo friends, neighbors, and families from the area all helped out. Flyers were put up pharmacies, grocery shops, and gas stations. Gabrielle's picture was put on posters all over Spring Creek and nearby places like Elko and Carlin. Things went crazy on social media at the same time. Hundreds of people shared posts about Gabrielle's abduction in just a few hours. Everyone in her school, fair, and neighborhood was trying to spread the word. But even though the reach grew, no good leads came in. Then the case went in a strange and scary new direction. Gabrielle's parents started getting texts from people they didn't know that asked for $25,000 to get her back safely. Threats and talk of chemicals were included in the texts, which said she was being held somewhere. Cybercrime experts found out where the texts came from. They came from a prepaid phone number that was entered with fake information. Investigators thought it was probably an extortion scam meant to take advantage of the family's emotional state to get money, even though the sender couldn't be found. According to the sheriff's office, the family shouldn't answer the texts because doing so could make things worse. The extortion was recorded as a different crime, and for now, it wasn't thought to have anything to do with Gabrielle's disappearance. It had been almost 48 hours since Gabrielle was last seen. More stress and fear built up as the silence lasted longer. Since there were no real leads, rumors began to spread. On community boards, hypotheses were written down. In secret chats, ideas were thrown around. The sheriff's office asked people not to make assumptions so as not to get in the way of the investigation. Even though there wasn't much information available, the search went on every day. People from the area looked in open fields, back roads, and dry creek beds that were far away. Some even used their own personal drones. At the same time, the police started working with Gabrielle's phone companies to find out where her phone was last seen using GPS. It was still quiet in the evening of March 10th. At this point, the details of Gabrielle's departure didn't answer as many questions as they raised. Bryce was the last person who saw her for sure. The idea that Gabrielle had just run away or been late was no longer being considered an option after what the investigators had learned. Two people from the Burner Basin area were driving on a country back road in the morning of March 11th, 2020 when they saw something strange. There are dark, dried marks in the sand. They were about 18 miles from the middle of Spring Creek in an area with almost no other cars. They saw a blue work tarp nearby that was partly weighed down with rocks. Police from the Elko County Sheriff's Office went to the spot and carefully took off the tarp. Under it, they found the body of a young woman. They were able to quickly tell that she was Gabrielle by looking at her and looking at her personal items. Something with her name on it was found next to her, which proved this. There was a lot of violence in the scene. Her body was on its back. Some of her clothes were torn, and there were clear signs that someone had strangled her. On the right side of her neck, a deep cut had hit a major artery. Later, the medical inspector found that this injury that caused the person to lose a lot of blood was the main cause of death, though asphyxiation was also a factor. There was a lot of blood loss and suffocation, which is what the official report said killed her. There were also signs of an aggressive attack. This was proven by the injuries and biological signs found on her inner legs and pelvis. A few yards away from the body, police found her white earbuds twisted in a bush. They were caught on trees in a way that made it look like she had moved or been moved through that area. Police also found a torn condom wrapper and a used condom in the grass. Both of these items had biological material on them. DNA tests were started right away. The cell phone was found about a third of a mile from the scene of the crime. The case was crushed and the screen was broken. There were clear signs that someone tried to break the phone and delete the call logs, location data, and messages. Still, forensic teams were able to get back some data from the SIM card and the phone's internal memory. In the days that followed, this digital proof would be very important. It was proven by experts that Gabrielle was on Snapchat until late afternoon on March 8th, just before her phone stopped working. There were also physical signs at the spot that showed what had happened. There were drag marks in the sand and dirt that showed her body had been moved after she was either asleep or dead. Scratches on the surface, torn pieces of fabric that matched her clothes, and small blood spots in the brush around her made it look like they had been in a fight. It was later proven through testing that the microscopic particles found under her fingernails were made of foreign biological material. After being sent, these samples were checked right away against the database of suspect DNA. When her body was found, it changed the whole course of the case. What started out as a search for a missing person was now publicly called a murder. There had been no clear signs of bloodshed until then. Investigators now had a clear crime scene, a body, physical proof, and DNA samples. Gabrielle's body was found in the Burner Basin area, which is far away and rough. People don't just drive through it for fun. There aren't any homes nearby, and there isn't much traffic. There's also not much chance of random observers. That amount of seclusion is probably what let the crime happen without being found right away. The land is overgrown with bushes and has dusty roads that go all over it. There is no lighting, no security cams, and no infrastructure. News of the body's finding was kept under tight lock and key. In a short public statement, the sheriff's office confirmed that remains had been found, but didn't say anything else. This method was chosen to keep the investigation's integrity, especially since DNA tests were still going on and major evidence was still being handled. Gabrielle's family was officially told that same evening there were police officers and crisis counselors there to help. The response broke my heart. Astonishment, shock, and grief. Even though word got around town that Gabrielle had died, not many people knew how or where she had been found. Once it was proven that someone had been killed, the investigation really got going. The first thing that was looked at was Gabrielle's personal life, especially any problems or shaky relationships that could point to a reason. One of the first people she was asked about was her ex-boyfriend. Their relationship ended a long time before she went missing, but friends said it was tense. Reports say he kept messaging her after they broke up, and some of the messages sent raised red flags. The brother of Gabriel also told the police about a scary thing someone said to him. One day they're going to find you dead in the desert. This was seen as a possible threat. Investigators looked at witness statements, social media messages, and text logs, but they couldn't find a clear link between the threat and Gabrielle's death. His work calendar, phone records, and surveillance footage all showed that he was somewhere else on the day she went missing. He had a good excuse in the end, so no one thought he was guilty. The next clue came from a person Gabrielle didn't know, but who showed up in her Snapchat chats under the name JT. The name came up several times in chats from the days before she went missing. Some of her friends talked about the name in interviews, and one said Gabrielle had said that she was just getting to know JT. Police started looking through all possible matches in the county using Snapchat profiles, initials, and usernames. A number of young guys were questioned because their initials were the same or because they might have a connection to Gabrielle. One of them, who drove a green pickup truck that looked a lot like the one in Bryce's story, caught my attention at first, but his story didn't hold up. Cell tower records, surveillance footage, and accounts from witnesses all showed that he was in a different town when Gabrielle went missing. As each of these possible leads was checked out, the police started to doubt everything Bryce had said. The strange man in the green truck seemed less like a real person and more like something that was added to throw off the probe. At that point, though, there wasn't enough solid proof to charge Bryce, so the cops kept looking into other possibilities. Officers checked every green registered car in the area, including farm trucks, private SUVs, and ranch cars, but none of them were a match. At the same time, they thought about other possibilities, such as the idea that the crime could have been done by someone from the outside. Rodeos, livestock fairs, and local exhibitions often drew people from nearby areas, as well as seasonal workers, people from out of town, and even competitive riders. But there was no solid information that pointed to someone from the outside. Another idea was that Gabrielle might have left on her own with someone she didn't know well without telling her family. But those closest to her strongly disagreed with this. Gabrielle's family and friends say she wasn't the type to act on impulse or go off with strangers. This process of getting rid of things took days. Each false lead had to be fully documented and confirmed before it could be thrown out. The investigation also had to deal with a problem. It didn't have enough resources. The local sheriff's office couldn't get in touch with a lot of forensic experts right away. Some tests had to be sent to the state lab or done by experts from counties nearby. The investigation stopped for a few weeks after Gabrielle's death. Detectives went back to Bryce Edward Dickey after trying every dead end. The attention was no longer on the mystery suspects, but on digital forensics that were directly linked to him. The first big hole in his story was found in Snap Map, which lets you share your position on Snapchat. Police have found evidence that Gabrielle's phone and Bryce's phone were both pinging from the same spot out in the Burner Basin Desert at the exact moment that Gabrielle's phone went dark. This fact directly went against what Bryce had said before. Bryce's phone had a selfie that was taken in the same desert area where Gabrielle's body was later found. This picture told us even more. The picture had information in it that showed it was taken the same day she disappeared. Since Bryce said he hadn't left town that day, the photo is very clear proof that he did. The DNA match, on the other hand, was the last piece that fully revealed his story. A sample of Bryce's DNA that was taken by court order was matched to genetic material found at the scene. The scores confirmed a match. Gabrielle had been in touch with him on the day she went missing. There was also proof of scratches on Bryce's body that were found just one day after Gabrielle's death. He said that he got hurt while working with horses, but the cuts didn't fit with that story. The scratches were straight and sharp, looking more like fingernail marks. Under his skin, forensic tests found molecular signs that matched Gabrielle's DNA. The green truck idea was also ruled out at the same time. Local traffic cameras did not show a single car that fit that description. No one else in the area said they saw a car like that either. Investigators also got back Snapchat texts that Bryce had deleted from his phone. Law enforcement was able to get back parts of talks with the company's help. In some of the recovered texts, Bryce pushed Gabrielle to meet him that day, even though she said she didn't want to. It was clear from these texts that their meeting wasn't random or unplanned. When the police had all of this proof, they called Bryce back in for more questions. His story began to fall apart this time. His new story of what happened didn't match what he had said before. That's why he was in the desert where Gabrielle's body was found and his DNA was found on her. He paused a lot, changed the way he said things, and tried to get the talk going in a different direction. After that, the police no longer thought of him as a witness. He was the person they thought was guilty. The case for killing Gabrielle Adlaki began in March 2022. Bryce Dickey was the person accused. He was charged with murder in the first degree and sexual attack with a deadly weapon. People were very interested in the story from the very beginning. Every day the courtroom was full of reporters, people from the neighborhood and Gabrielle's family. Several important pieces of evidence helped the prosecution build its case. DNA testing put Bryce at the scene of the crime. Medical professionals said the victim had injuries that looked like they had been strangled and multiple stab wounds. A big part was played by digital forensics. Putting together all the computer evidence helped the jury get a clear picture of what happened and when it happened. The defense tried to argue that the evidence wasn't valid. Lawyers for Bryce said the meeting was voluntary and that Gabrielle's death was the fault of someone else. They said they weren't sure about the data and said it might have been changed. But forensic experts disproved those claims by making sure the digital files were real and that the right chain of custody steps were taken. The jury began to think about the case after days of evidence, cross-examination, and expert analysis. They did it in less than 24 hours. Gabrielle had been missing for almost 2 years when the decision came out in March 2022. She was guilty on all counts. Bryce Dickey was found guilty of first-degree murder and sexual attack with a deadly weapon. He was given a life term with the chance of parole after 46 years. As the ruling was read, there was silence in the courtroom. It was the end of something, but it wasn't peace. The parents of Gabrielle were there. After the judge gave the punishment, her mother said a few words. Even though her speech was calm, it was full of sadness and anger. She said that the decision would never be able to make up for her daughter's death, but she hoped it would teach them a lesson. Always be careful when giving trust. Anyone who lives in Spring Creek knows. Everyone else, so Bryce wasn't just another suspect. He was a part of the community. The response was strong. It was hard for everyone, even people who didn't know the Alaki family very well. To be honest, Bryce's old teachers and friends spoke out about how shocked they were. They thought he was quiet, polite, and maybe even nice. But the fact that he was involved in such a horrible crime broke down any idea that looks can reveal character. Thank you for watching and supporting this channel. Every view, like, and comment helps us continue to create powerful true crime content that spreads awareness and encourages people to stay alert. Together, we're building a community that values truth, vigilance, and understanding because knowledge can save lives and awareness can prevent tragedy. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and turn on all notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and trust your instincts. In this video, we uncover the heartbreaking and terrifying story of a woman who was slowly dying before everyone's eyes, while the truth behind her suffering was far darker than anyone could have imagined. As always, summer started in Decatur, Alabama, a quiet town. But early one morning, a woman was taken to the nearby hospital and was in very bad shape. It was hard for a young mother to breathe. Her life had been centered around her two beloved children. The medics were confused because her body had been drained. The fast decline couldn't be explained by a standard explanation. People who knew her well talked about a great husband. Friends said she was pulling away from people more and more. Neighbors remembered that she had hardly been outside in the past few months. Before we get into the full story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life crime documentaries that dive deep into the darkest and most unbelievable true stories from around the world. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss when a new case drops. Every story here reveals something new about the hidden side of human nature. And I'd really love to know which country are you watching from. Drop it down in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel and connect people from every corner of the world who share the same fascination for true crime and justice. Your support truly helps keep these stories alive and remembered. Now let's get into it. Hannah Mann lived in Decatur, Alabama, and her house was completely set up around her kids' daily schedules. She got up early, dropped off her kids at crash, ate, slept, and did things in the evening. She was in charge of the house and also worked part-time as a skincare specialist. She would sometimes meet clients at their homes and other times go to their places. She hadn't tried to find a steady job. Her husband brought in money for the family so she could focus on taking care of the house and her children. Hannah was in her early 20s when these things happened. They got married in 2018. Brian Mann was a doctor in the area who had his own business. His office was known for being clean, well-organized, and professional with friendly receptionists and strict obedience to schedules. Patients liked how he paid close attention during meetings, made personalized treatment plans, and stuck to them when they had long-term conditions. Brian had built a good name for himself as a doctor over the years, which paid off. People in the area trusted him with their health and brought him new clients through word of mouth. They had a simple but nice life. The family's income came from the money made at the clinic. They planned to spend a lot of money on big purchases, but they didn't skimp on their kids. Neighbors saw a clean house, a neat garden, and fun activities on the weekends that made the family seem like they had the perfect life. A successful husband who worked outside the home, a wife who took care of the kids in a calm routine. But things were less flexible than they seemed inside the marriage. Brian made many choices about the house and slowly cut off his wife's links to the outside world. Hannah rarely got together with her friends after the wedding. When she did, she often put them off or said no because it was inconvenient, a bad time, or she didn't have anyone to watch the kids. After giving up on social media, she was locked out of all of her accounts. Brian said it was for the safety and privacy of the family. He could see their joint email and knew their passwords. He also took care of almost all of the home tasks like managing subscriptions, paying bills, and making appointments. Hannah spent all of her days taking care of her home. Every morning, getting everyone ready came first. She ran chores, cooked, and did laundry in the afternoons. Evenings were changed to fit the kids' schedules. Her visits to the center were few and far between, and only when she had to. Brian told everyone, including himself, that everything would be okay. He said that his experience as a doctor helped at home, too, by giving tips on health, nutrition, vitamins, and sleep schedules. People in the area thought he was very involved with his family. Family photo albums and holiday snapshots showed a peaceful life with happy faces, shared trips, and captions that were just right. That's how the story started. Hannah seemed to be doing well. Her daily life was well organized. Her parents were taking more control of the house, and she slowly lost any personal space she used to have. Around the middle of 2021, there was a change in the Mann family that didn't seem strange at first. One day, Brian used his job as a healthcare worker to suggest that Hannah start taking vitamins every day. His explanation was that the formula was made to help her body, especially since she spent so much time taking care of their kids and barely had time to rest. He said that the supplements were safe and of good quality because they came straight from his center. There were edible gummies and powdered mixes that needed to be mixed with water. Hannah was used to believing her husband's medical advice, so this all seemed like a normal way to take care of her health. It was easy to get into the habit of taking vitamins. In the evenings, Brian would bring them to his room and put them on the table with a glass of water. She would be gently reminded if she forgot, and he would stress how important it was to be consistent. He would also reassure her that the benefits would only come from doing it regularly. He seemed caring and responsible in the way he kept at it. The way Hannah felt started to change slowly over the course of 2 weeks. She thought it was because she was always taking care of her son and daughter and doing a lot of housework. First, she felt tired and dizzy. The signs got worse over time. More and more people were having back and stomach pain. Even though she hadn't changed what she was eating, she was still losing weight. She hadn't been trying to lose weight, but by the end of summer, she noticed that her clothes were too big for her. Brian didn't get upset about these changes. He reassured her that the side effects were normal and that she would feel stronger than ever in a few months. He said that her body was just getting used to the better diet. He said it with complete confidence, pointing out that he was a doctor. Hannah knew she wasn't in danger. The symptoms got worse over time, and there were no sudden crises. Improvements every once in a while gave her false hope that she was getting better. The number on the scale kept going down, though, and her energy kept going down. The building blocks for what would soon become a major and dangerous health problem were laid during this time. Hannah's health started to get worse more clearly by late summer 2021. It became harder to eat regularly because I felt sick. Her weight dropped almost 40 pounds between September 2021 and January 2022. By January 2022, she weighed about 84 pounds. Her daily housework started to make her tired and weak. It got hard to stand in the kitchen for long amounts of time. She was dizzy and had pain in her lower back. She was tired from climbing stairs. Hannah eventually found it hard to keep her balance while walking. To help her avoid falling, she started moving around the house in a rolling office chair to take some weight off her legs. Her muscle cramps at night got worse and her sleep became restless and shallow. Even though Hannah's health was getting worse, Brian told her not to go to any medical centers. He insisted that he could personally plan her schedule and help her find the right mix of rest and recovery. He kept using phrases like parenting stress, seasonal fatigue, and lack of sleep to make her complaints sound like they could be easily explained and didn't need to be looked at by a professional. Along with his refusal to get medical help from outside sources, Brian slowly took more control over his home life. He started telling Hannah when she should rest, constantly told her to take the supplements he gave her, and brought her water to make sure she stuck to his plan. He suggested safe and useful things that could be done at home, like lying down more, drinking water, and doing light stretches. During talks, he kept his tone soft and attentive, which made it seem like he cared. By late autumn, her tiredness had become worse than any of her other complaints. Hannah had a tough time lifting her kids. She often asked them to wait while she took a break. Daily tasks had to be spread out. It took hours to do simple things. By December, the difference between how she looked and how she felt inside was too clear to ignore. Her clothes were not tight. It was even stranger that her body temperature stayed the same while her face looked pale. Hannah knew she was getting worse, but she couldn't figure out why. Her food hadn't changed, and she hadn't been given more work to do. By the beginning of January 2022, her health had become very bad. When she stood up, she felt suddenly weak and her vision would blur for a short time. She had a hard time eating because she was sometimes turned off by food and felt sick after just a few bites. It became dangerous to move around the house without help. Hannah needed the rolling office chair more and more just to get from one room to another. Even with all of this, Brian didn't change his mind. He kept telling her the worst is over, that her body just needed more time to heal, and it would soon be there. His voice stayed calm and he kept doing the same things. He took care of everything, sent out notes, and spoke with unwavering confidence. Hannah wasn't the one who decided to get medical help when her health clearly became life-threatening. When her mother came to visit sometimes, she saw that something was very wrong and decided to do something without Brian being involved. Hannah could hardly walk at that point, so her mom helped her get ready and walked her to the car. While on the way to the hospital, Hannah didn't say much. She mostly complained about having stomach pain and being very weak. When she got to the University of Alabama hospital emergency room, her mother told the staff right away that her daughter's health had been getting worse for months with no medical care. The first things the doctors checked were the person's weight, blood pressure, temperature, and heart rate. The results made it clear how bad things were. In a dangerously low weight range, her heart was weak and her blood pressure was all over the place. At first, doctors looked into a lot of different possible causes, ranging from long-term conditions to more dangerous systemic illnesses. Hannah was told she needed to go through a long list of lab tests and diagnostic treatments. Something scary was found in the blood tests. Hannah had about 80 micrograms per distiller of lead in her blood, which is a dangerously high amount. To give you an idea, anything above 10 is physically troubling. In her case, the numbers showed that she was in immediate danger of dying. Further tests showed signs of organ damage inside her body, and soon after she got acute respiratory failure. Doctors had to put her on a machine to help her lungs work better. Imaging scans and radiological tests showed that her cells were full of small metal-like particles. These were found to be lead crystals that had built up in her body over time, not from a single exposure, but from long-term exposure. This long-term pattern of exposure explained why the symptoms had come on slowly without any sudden medical emergencies until her condition got very bad. Hannah's health got worse so quickly that doctors had to put her into a medical coma to ease the stress on her body and stop damage from becoming lasting. Compilation therapy, which uses certain drugs to bind the lead and flush it out of her body, started right away as part of her treatment. The process was slow and her vital signs had to be checked on a regular basis. Hannah stayed in the hospital for almost 2 months. The medical team was able to stabilize her breathing, keep her vital signs in check, and lower her blood lead levels during that time. But even at this point, it was clear that the overdose would have long-lasting effects. Long-term exposure to such a dangerous metal made it unlikely that the person would fully heal. Doctors made it clear that even 1 day's delay could have been fatal. Hannah's life was saved by her mother's choice to break away from the family's usual routine. This allowed for an early diagnosis and immediate treatment. Once the hospital knew for sure what was wrong, they told the Morgan County Department of Human Resources. They then told Alabama state officials. A group of experts in toxic metal poisoning took on the case. The first thing they did was check the Mann family house for any possible sources of lead in the environment. The kitchen and bathrooms were the first places that were checked. Water samples were taken from all of the faucets. Filters were taken out and recorded. It was also written down what kind of shape the pipes and dishes were in. Investigators also got dust samples, paint chips from old surfaces, and dirt from outside the house. They went through the pantry and looked at the food and nutrition goods that were given to the kids. Brian did everything he could. He showed Hannah the vitamin pills she had been taking, which came from his office. He also said that fast food might have been a source of lead poisoning. Investigators carefully wrote down what he said, but experts quickly threw out the fast food idea. With a blood lead level close to 80 micrograms per distiller, it's possible that there would have been more cases. Still, no other incidents in the area were recorded. Also, Brian, the couple's son, and their daughter showed no signs of being exposed to lead, which makes the idea of a shared accidental source even less likely. The first tests done in the lab on the drinking water, paint samples, dust, pantry items, and nutrition products did not find any dangerous amounts of lead or other unusual things. At this early stage, inspectors did not find any signs of common sources of lead contamination in homes. At the same time, detectives said that everyone in the house should get tested. Brian said that the results of the tests on his son and daughter were normal and that he would do his own screening later at a different place. There were worries about his delay, especially since some tests could have been done right away on the scene. This was marked to be looked at again. A couple of days later, the house was checked again, this time by people from the Alabama Department of Public Health. The range of tests was increased. At both the beginning flows and the end flush points, water samples were taken. Dust was gathered from many areas. Filters were looked at. Swabs were taken from the kitchen sink, kettle, and blender to see if any metals might have leaked out. Investigators also asked for the vitamins and powder mixes packaging to find out who made them and what batch number they were. The second round of tests confirmed what the first round of tests had found. There was no widespread environmental source of lead in the home. But because authorities didn't have access to physical samples, it was still not clear where the supplements Hannah had taken came from or what they were made of. By talking to Hannah's family and close friends, investigators started to piece together aspects of her daily life. They got information about who made her food and, more importantly, when and where she took the supplements. It was important to pay close attention to how often and why they were used. Family members say that Brian always told Hannah to take the supplements at night, always at home with water that he had put by the bed ahead of time. These factors made it possible to build a theory about intentional oral exposure that works. In the beginning of the investigation, 3 main points were found. There was no proof of lead contamination in the home. The restaurant theory was not backed up by any evidence, and the circumstances surrounding the supplement intake, especially Brian's direct involvement, needed more research. Because of this, the police turned their attention to Brian and started to check out his claims and see if he had any access to lead products outside of his home. After Hannah was taken to the hospital, Brian went to the hospital and said that he had done a self-exam. He told the medical staff that he had used X-ray machines at his own practice and found something foreign in his body that he thought might be lead. The hospital staff was confused by his story. Using X-rays to diagnose yourself is very unusual, and using medical tools for personal diagnosis is also not normal. Doctors demanded that he go to the hospital for a full medical exam. Brian looked clearly worried when he learned that the tests would be done on his own. It was confirmed by the medical team that lead was in his system after they did the appropriate tests, but the level showed that the exposure was very recent. It was too low of a quantity to cause symptoms, and it didn't show any signs of long-term buildup. The results from Hannah, on the other hand, showed clear proof of long-term high exposure over several months. The experts came to a clear conclusion. Brian had probably taken lead right before going to the hospital to make himself look like another victim. This could have been an attempt to present himself as a worried spouse looking into the cause of the problem, but the timing of the exposure didn't match, which made his account less convincing. More interviews with friends and coworkers confirmed that Brian never showed any signs that would be expected from being exposed to lead on a regular basis while Hannah was sick. His daily behavior and physical state had not changed. This was yet another strong sign for detectives that Hannah's poisoning was not an accident. It looked like it was planned, and there was no danger to the rest of the family. Investigators became even more suspicious when Brian tried to act like he was a victim. The police thought that his actions were probably meant to draw attention away from the main issue, which was how and where lead had been getting into Hannah's body for a long time. The investigation team got a call in the summer of 2022 from a man who had worked as a contractor on a job for Brian the old year. He said that he had been hired in 2021 to add an X-ray room to Brian's office. Part of the job was to protect the walls with lead sheets. Once the job was done, there were several sheets and scraps of lead that were left over. The contractor said Brian asked that the leftover parts not be taken away and said he would take care of them himself. This didn't seem strange at the time. These things were already paid for by Brian, who was the client and the building owner. However, the contractor's role in that job changed when they learned about Hannah's illness. He got in touch with the cops and made a formal report. The timing of Hannah's health decline was compared to this information by investigators. In August 2021, not long after the clinic renovations were finished, they found that her symptoms had gotten a lot worse. The dates lined up. Brian got access to lead right before his wife got sick for a long time. These details gave detectives proof that the toxic metal came from somewhere outside the family's home. The contractor talked in great detail about the whole job from the start to the end cleanup. He said that normally any extra materials are either sent back to the contractor's building or thrown away in a way that follows safety rules. He made it clear that he didn't see what Brian did with the last lead. He had only given it to the clinic owner because he was asked to. Investigators got paperwork from the contractor, including the service agreement, dates for when work would begin and end, and a full list of all the materials that were brought. These records proved that lead-based shielding materials were present and at the right time. Clinic staff were also asked about how to get to the work area and where to store building waste. Their evidence said that only Brian had the keys to the X-ray room and that the cleanup after the installation was done without the contractor's help. This schedule was very important to the case. Brian got in touch with a real source of leads in 2021. Even though the contractor's statement didn't say how the lead was given, it did give a clear answer about where it came from, which supported the idea of deliberate exposure. As the probe went on, more information came to light. Hannah had several life insurance plans worth a total of about $1.3 million. Brian was named as both the policyholder and the only beneficiary on all of the plans. The fact that these plans were held by several different insurance companies made it harder to track them down and made it harder to see what kind of costs they covered. After looking at the dates of the insurance policies, we found that the first policy was bought in 2020 and Hannah probably knew about it. But in 2021, around the time her health started to get worse, more rules were put in place. It was not possible to add another $1.5 million to the total coverage because the applications were turned down. The fact that Hannah's condition was getting worse at the same time that her insurance coverage was increased became a key piece of evidence backing the theory of intent. The health surveys and medical forms that were needed for insurance approval were especially interesting. These papers needed proof that the person was healthy, and a sudden loss of weight could have led to rejection. Hannah said that Brian told her she had to wear weighted bands on her legs during medical weigh-ins to hide the fact that she had lost weight and give the impression that she was physically stable, which would help her get insurance. Brian seemed to be more interested in the policy's boundaries and conditions than in the diagnosis or treatment plan while he was in consultations. People who worked in the medical field said that he always made health issues a priority. Hannah's insurance forms had computer signatures on them, which later became a problem. Hannah told the defense that she wasn't aware of or involved in the process, but the defense said that her husband had access to some of her internet accounts. The bigger picture for investigators was more important than the details on the forms. They wanted to know who started the applications, who would get the money, and how the medical records were changed to meet policy standards. A red flag was found when the family's insurance collection was looked at. As the main breadwinner, Brian was covered by a fairly basic policy. Hannah, on the other hand, was covered for much larger amounts because she made less money. Most of the time, people who make more money are covered for more. Concerns were made about the difference, which suggested there might be financial wrongdoing. Based on these facts, it was clear that the person was after money. Brian would have gotten a lot of money if Hannah had died. Both sides were very sure of their views by the time the case went to court. The prosecution came up with a good reason to believe that Brian Mann poisoned Hannah on purpose with lead so that he could get insurance money. Medical statistics, a detailed timeline, and a lot of financial records backed up this story. The prosecutors used all the important information to back up their claims. The defense plan was to show that the evidence wasn't strong and to point out problems with the way the case was handled. They said there was no direct evidence connecting Brian to the way the lead got into Hannah's system, and they asked the court to throw out the circumstantial evidence as not being strong enough without clear proof of how the poisoning happened. The court case started in June 2025 and moved quickly through the following months. A lot of the defense was about how the biological samples were collected and stored. It was brought up by lawyers that urine had been gathered in non-standard containers and processed outside of a lab sometime. They also talked about the fact that the original supplement containers were missing and that the work to chemically match the lead found in Brian's clinic to the lead found in Hannah's body was not finished. The defense also brought up other ideas that suggested the chance of accidentally being exposed to the poison. The court looked at both sides and decided that the medical and procedural evidence that was presented could be used. They said that some mistakes in the process might affect how the jury judges the evidence's weight, but they did not make it invalid. After the witnesses were questioned, the defense didn't call any more witnesses because they said the prosecution had to prove their case. The prosecution's closing argument went over the timeline. Brian got access to lead in 2021. Hannah's condition started to get worse soon after. No lead sources were found in the home. The theory of shared environmental exposure was thrown out because no one else in the house showed signs of contamination. The financial motive was shown by the insurance policies and attempts to get more coverage. And Brian's claim of being poisoned himself was shown to be false by medical analysis. The defense kept going with the same main point. The evidence was only weak and there was no clear proof of how the lead got into Hannah's system. After thinking about it for a while, the jury came back and said the person was guilty of attempted murder. The judge told the police right away to hold Brian without bail until he was sentenced. A hearing to decide the sentence was set for early August 2025. The judge talked about the possible punishments for the crime, which could include life in prison based on how badly the victim was hurt and how much planning went into it. The sentence hearing took place at the beginning of August 2025. It was already too late. The court had found Brian Mann guilty of trying to kill someone with poison. The government pushed for the harshest punishment. The prosecutors made it clear that Brian's actions could not be excused as a temporary slip-up or a one-time thing. Instead, they were part of a planned multi-step process that happened over a few months. During this time, he kept Hannah's worsening condition from doctors, pushed back her diagnosis, and tried to make up a story that Hannah's illness was caused by a shared home source of contamination. In their request, the defense asked for a sentence other than life in jail. They pointed out that Brian had a clean record in the past, was well-liked in the community, worked in medicine, and had taken care of his family in the past. They also made a point of saying that Hannah had lived and was still getting care. In addition, they said that the proof of purpose wasn't clear-cut and asked the judge to take that into account. In explaining the court's decision, the judge said that all the proof, such as medical reports, financial records, witness statements, and investigation results, painted a full and clear picture of intentional behavior. The judge said the crime had been going on for a long time, had done permanent damage, and would have effects on the victim for the rest of their lives. In the end, Brian Mann was given a 25-year prison term that did not allow him to get out for 20 years. Hannah Mann was also told to get money back for her medical bills and mental harm. The exact amount will be decided in a separate civil suit. But Hannah's sentence did not take her back to her old life. Even though her health had improved, the effects of the serious lead poisoning could not be undone. Doctors told her that she would have nerve problems, constant pain, constant tiredness, and need to have her blood checked for the rest of her life. Some of the motor skills she had lost were partly returned, but she still needed a wheelchair to go long distances. People close to Hannah were given care for her son and daughter. Because the case got a lot of attention from the media, getting psychiatric help became an important part of their recovery. Lots of people were affected by the story. People who used to go to Brian's office were shocked and confused by what happened. The center he used to run was shut down soon after he was caught. His license was legally taken away and all of his medical equipment, including the X-ray machine, was taken away for forensic testing. After that, the building was put on the market. The insurance companies involved in the case checked Brian's plans against their own standards. As a result, stricter checks were made on medical information for high-value policies for law enforcement as part of new risk assessment processes. The case set a standard for using toxicological data to show purpose, even when there wasn't a proven way for the substance to be delivered. Investigators said that consistent witness statements and indirect proof backed up by expert analysis were very important in securing the conviction. Hannah thanked the doctors, police, and bystanders in public, saying that she might not have lived without their help. She wouldn't talk about her plans for the future. Instead, she stressed how important it was for her to heal and take care of her son and daughter. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. Your time, support, and engagement mean the world. Every like, comment, and share helps this channel grow and allows us to keep creating true crime content that spreads awareness and reminds everyone to stay alert in their daily lives. Together, we're building a space where people can learn, stay informed, and look out for one another. If you haven't already, please subscribe, tap the bell icon, and turn on all notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos. Don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and comment below. Your thoughts and feedback really do make a difference. It helps us understand what kind of stories connect with you and keeps this community active and growing. Before you go, remember this. Stay safe, stay aware, and trust your instincts. Pay attention to your surroundings. Take precautions when meeting new people. And listen to that small voice that tells you when something feels wrong. A moment of awareness can change everything. Keep your loved ones close, check in on your friends, and take care of yourself because safety always starts with awareness. Thank you again for being here. Your support keeps this channel going one video at a time. Stay kind, stay cautious, and stay curious. We'll see you in the next